Morning. Today, I thought I would talk about the topic of having a career, something that I was lied to about when I was younger and didn't even realize it till recently. I was listening to, I believe, Jordan Peterson, but it could have been someone else, and he'd mentioned how, well, first of all, he said that a lot of women had been lied to when they were younger, the feminist movement specifically, because they were told they could have a career, which is technically true, I suppose, given the context of what he was saying, but ideally what he did say is that only 1 or 2% of the people ever get a career. Everyone else has a job. And it was interesting, the way he explained it is that basically a career is something that you would do even if you weren't getting paid, and that you would also be willing to work like 60, 70 hours a week to do as well. Other than that, you're paid because it's something you just don't want to do, which even for professions like lawyers, etc., is probably true. Most of them wouldn't do it unless they were getting paid. The hyper ambitious of us would do so because they want to get a bonus and keep score, and the rest of it for the lifestyle it buys, but essentially they wouldn't do it unless they got paid. He was tying this into the whole concept of we actually are meant to pair bond, and then if you're over 40 and have no partner or family, I said or family or partner at least, then you're going to be one lonely, miserable person for the next 40 years of your life. And I'm starting to see that in some people who are acquaintances of mine. It reminds me of a video I saw recently where a feminist was interviewing an old feminist from the 60s, and this woman, the older one by appearance, is probably in her 70s, and she was basically warning her that she'd been told that it was okay to have a family, and she did everything she was supposed to, had the career and everything, but had no family or partner. And she spent the last decades alone, and her friends were dying, and she was really quite sad. She was just warning. She said she just wished she'd been told. She was almost crying. And what surprised me is the 40-something woman who was interviewing her said she was a feminist, was trying to shut her down and argue her out of it, which tells me that a little bit of dogma involved because, well, one, women, do you think, would listen to other women, but the fact that she was saying something that she disagreed with and couldn't conceptualize was fascinating. But anyway, back to this 1 or 2% or 3% career thing. I thought it was fascinating because in my own experience, the only reason I went on to university is I wanted to do a specific job in a bank. I thought it was a career, but it wasn't much of an illusion, I suppose. And when I eventually got that job, where I wanted to be, pretty fast out of university, with 3 or 4 years, built my way into it. It was great for the first 2 or 3 years. And then it became drudgery. The repetition was driving me insane. I didn't realize it was driving me insane, but in hindsight, I was having difficulty going to sleep at night because I didn't want to go the next morning. Sunday nights were the worst. Couldn't fall asleep. That's an indicator. And I was having to, unfortunately, the position required a lot of entertaining, so I was picking up quite the alcohol habit. Whether it's meeting with clients or having golf and drinking, or basically going home and trying to drink to go to sleep. All indicators that I probably wasn't doing what I wanted to do with my life. In hindsight, that was a controllable thing, and I'll maybe discuss how we self-medicate in the future. But in my point of view, it was definitely what I foresaw happening. He was also tying this into I believe, or I will anyway, where women who are suddenly in their 30s get baby rabies, which is a bit of a derogatory term, but anecdotally I've seen it to a degree. And he actually said something very interesting. He said they get 35 and then they have some difficulty conceiving, because a percentage of women do. And then basically it's a 10-year IVF slot. And he likened it to almost a terminal illness regarding what you had to go through, I guess. I've only heard secondhand, I've never researched it, but I understand that the whole gathering of the eggs, etc., is not a comfortable experience. And then the failure rate can be pretty bad. I had a guy I worked with, and his wife and him had went through it, and they had to make a very difficult decision. If I recall, for whatever reason, a number of eggs took at the same time, and they basically had to make the decision to abort like 3 of them. I think 4 took, so that 1 could live. He was definitely affected by that decision, because his whole demeanor changed when he was talking about it. And the conversation came out of the blue. We were off topic on something else, and he segued it into that conversation, I believe. And not like he doesn't like his son, but for him it was a difficult decision. I think his wife was struggling with it too. I think that's where the topic segued in. So there's some of the lies we've been told about what we can do with our lives. Funny, he mentioned one thing I found truly fascinating. I think I might make a whole topic on it. He talked about, he used to, Jordan Peterson, was a consultant for lawyers, and he discussed how law firms were trying to move heaven and earth to keep their 30-something female lawyers in the profession. Because what was happening is they made partner, and I guess they stopped, looked around, and realized what partner meant. It meant 80-hour weeks. And they were married, and because women have a tendency to marry the same level or higher, they were sitting in a household. She was making $350, he was making $350 or more, generally. And she looked around and said, I don't want to do this. And they're dropping out. And basically, for those men that they were married to, the money, they didn't like it any better, but they liked the money as a way to keep score. As his suggestion was, and I met a lot of people like this, his suggestion was that they didn't care what big their bonus was, as long as they made more bonus than the son of a bitch who's beside them. And he talked about the percentage, small percentage of the people, the men, who are the CEOs of these companies, and how they work 60, 70, 80 hours a week, more close to 70 and 80, taking the 2 a.m. phone calls, because they basically were keeping score. And he said, don't underestimate the fact that these people are generally super efficient at what they do, and they work all the time. Deadly combination. Like, I can understand FaceTime, but they're traveling multiple hours, etc. And there's a small minority of men who just, this is what they want to do. And I've seen that in my personal family. I have, well, ex-brother-in-law now, but brother-in-law and sister-in-law, both highly paid consultants in the actuarial field. And they both actually walked off of that in their mid-30s. And it was really when the kids came, it was just insanity what the hours that they were having to put in. they still work more than 40 hours a week, but with that career they get to choose where they live. So they live in the Caribbean, and they're outside a head office, so I'd be shocked if they're working more than 40 hours a week, really. There's a lot of pretending that they're at the office, etc., but they get the projects in, and they make income close to those levels. Both of them seem happy. Although in that field, you're right off your 20s to finish your fellowship, which is a series of tests. I actually have another friend, one of the smartest guys I know, who graduated and then realized how long that tests would take, and he said, I'm not doing that to my 20s. So he literally went back, got his MBA, and took a field in Treasury. Anyway, so guess what? We've been lied to. Only about 2 to 3% of the population has a career. That's it.